Welcome back to Motivational Moments. I am your host, Mason Metzger. In today's episode, I am going to discuss with you the importance of adaptability. When I initially came up with the topic for today's episode, I was planning on discussing how my diagnosis has challenged me to adapt in various scenarios. As I began to consider the topic further with my audience in mind, I decided to focus on the employment of persons with disabilities. In many respects, there is a need for the workplace to adapt to better meet the needs and abilities of employees with disabilities, specifically employees with complex disabilities, such as individuals with needs related to mobility, and several other categories of disability. In my view, the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990 and what followed are wonderful pieces of legislation. However, these legislative efforts are only the beginning in terms of reform that needs to happen in order to make the workforce more accepting of persons with disabilities. A 2019 job report from DisabledWorld.com reported that of the 20 million people with disabling conditions who qualify to work based upon his or her age, only 7.5 million of those individuals have jobs. When looking at individuals with disabilities between the ages of 18 and 64, only 37% of those individuals were employed in comparison to the 77.2% of able-bodied persons who are employed. I hypothesize that the number of unemployed persons with disabilities will grow as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. In my view, many people with disabilities are unemployed because there is a lack of jobs that fit the needs and capabilities of individuals with disabilities. If there are jobs that do so, they tend to be entry-level positions. In my experience, I have not seen many individuals with disabilities in executive-level roles. From a diversity and inclusion standpoint, qualified individuals with disabilities need to be represented at C-suite level roles to facilitate a culture shift, which is especially critical at that particular organizational level, being that shifts in approach and changes to the culture take root at the executive level, not necessarily at the entry level. At the entry level, it is vital for employees with disabilities and their able-bodied counterparts to employ self-advocacy skills through networking with executives at the top to facilitate all types of shifts and changes, whether they be related to organizational culture or other initiatives. One of the primary ways to reduce the gap in employment among persons with disabilities that came to my mind as I was interpreting the data was shifting to an ability-specific role design. By this, I mean tailoring positions that meet the needs of individuals with disabilities while at the same time maintaining organizational goals and expectations, but focusing on the strengths of individuals. Even when looking at people without disabilities, I feel like if we were able to tailor positions based on people's strengths, they would enjoy their jobs much more. To accomplish this, employees and employers would need to remain open-minded by taking on a posture that recognizes the value embedded within trial and error. Another component that is important for me to add to this discussion is the idea of reasonable accommodations under the Americans with Disabilities Act. Based on my experiences in education, often it can be difficult to define reasonable accommodations because it is not easy to determine what poses a fiscal burden versus an inconvenience. In my specific case, even when given assistive technology such as dictation software, some level of hindrance is still present, primarily because of the fact that even top-of-the-line dictation software is less accurate than having a typist or transcriptionist. Currently, in education, such services are paid for through vocational rehabilitation. However, I am uncertain as to whether or not such a service will continue when I enter the workforce, or if my employer will provide that service as a reasonable accommodation, specifically in an entry-level position, being that employees do not typically have administrative support at that level. One of the barriers that several sources have highlighted is the fear of losing waiver services and other forms of support paid for through Medicaid and other government programs. In that respect, it is vital that companies examine the benefits packages given to all employees, but specifically for employees with disabilities. Benefits packages should include some form of caregiving support, as well as making sure that plans include coverage for complex rehabilitation technology and other medical devices. There are a few internship programs that I am aware of that are designed for people with disabilities, which are outstanding models for employers to follow because of the fact that the student is given the assistive technology that they require to perform the job, and the role is designed to fit the unique abilities of the individual as well as their interests and career goals. I hope to participate in such a program before my undergraduate career ends. However, the fear of losing waiver services and other forms of support to participate in an internship program seems like many hoops to jump through for an experience that does not end in guaranteed employment. If individuals are placed in an environment with limited barriers, I question, how does that translate to organizations that have not yet evolved to the same level of inclusiveness? Another question that comes to my mind for leadership to consider is, how can we reshape culture to include qualified individuals with disabilities in organizations? Additionally, how can we accomplish this in such a way that does not make employees with disabilities stand out or appear to have special treatment? In the next episode, I will discuss how we can reshape organizational culture by embracing universal design, which aims to make environments, services, and technologies accessible to everyone in the first place, with only minor adaptations needing to be made in the future on a case-by-case basis. Do you have questions or suggestions for a future episode? Email your questions and suggestions to mason@masonmetzger.com. Be sure to join the conversation on my social media platforms, including LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter. Thanks for listening and have a wonderful rest of your day.